everybody, Jordan Nelson here. Today we're going to talk about my top 10 things you should be focusing on to create high quality wedding film. So let's get started. So what I want to focus on today is what separates an average, just okay, or bad wedding film from something that's considered high quality. Now, the quality of a wedding film obviously has a continuum. There isn't just low quality and high quality, and the quality of something is very subjective as well. But when you watch a wedding film online, there are certain things that jump out at you that tell you, hey, this was made really well. These people know what they're doing. They make great wedding films, as opposed to like, oh, this looks like it was a beginner. I see a lot of mistakes. I see lots of things that just don't look very good or didn't look like they knew what they were doing. You can just kind of tell when you watch it, just really overexposed, using the wrong frame rates and trying to slow it down. So the theme for all of this is to reduce sloppiness. Now that is a huge challenge, because unlike something like an interview or something you can set up and get all of your settings and make it look the way you want, wedding filmmaking is run and gun. And when it's time to go, like, it's showtime. You don't get any do-overs. So that's what makes making high quality wedding films so hard, is because you've got to be on right then, right there. You don't get a bunch of second chances. So coming from a solo wedding filmmaker, what should be the things that you're focusing on to kind of tighten the screws on your wedding films and reduce the sloppiness so they're considered high quality? So number one, making sure things are in focus. When things are out of focus, maybe you're doing like a rack focus, or you're going from out of focus to in focus, that's a time when it's totally fine. But when it looks like your camera is hunting for focus, or maybe you set it to manual and you're just off, that just looks really sloppy. It distracts from the film. I remember the first camera I had, it did not have great autofocus. It was always hunting, and I was always really scared when the bride was walking down the aisle that it would lose focus on her and it would start focusing somewhere else and trying to hunt for it, which that did happen, but at least I had a little snippet in there that I could use for the film. And then using manual focus too, it's really hard to just focus on the little LCD screen and know that you've nailed the manual focus every time, especially during a wedding day when it's run and gun. So if you find yourself losing focus a lot, like, what are you gonna do to rectify that situation? Does it need to be a new camera? Is it a new lens? Are there certain settings that you're using incorrectly? Do you need to practice more? Get to know your camera more right now. Maybe there's some manual focus settings that you could actually do better with than autofocus at certain points during the day. Maybe that's just something that you prefer. I mean, autofocus is getting really good these days with these new cameras. So if you have an older model or maybe a beginner model camera, you may want to do some tests with your camera to see how you can make sure that you're keeping things in focus. So yes, number one, focus. Make that a priority, figure that out. Number two, camera shake. Prospective couples have told me that this is something that hindered them from going from certain videographers because they had really shaky footage. Their films were just not clean cut. It looked sloppy. So couples can notice that kind of thing. I made an entire video about how to get smooth and stable footage, so I'll link it above and below. But make sure you're finding ways to steady and stabilize your camera or even your lens. If you're looking into new lenses, getting an image stabilized lens, or having a camera with in-body stabilization, or shooting less handheld and more like on a gimbal or a glide camera on a tripod, just something so it's not shaking. If you're using especially really long focal lengths at the ceremony, this is where I see it a lot. When you're using really long focal lengths, handheld, or even on a tripod, and you're kind of moving and panning and it just does not look smooth. It's very jittery and jerky. You don't want that. So go ahead and check out that other video and find some ways to smooth out and stabilize your footage. Number three, exposure. So really blown out highlights. So maybe some skin tones are just totally white bright because you overexposed for the subject. Maybe that would require an ND filter, or for you to change some settings on your camera. Just learn how to shoot in bright sunlight. I actually just made a video about how to shoot in bright sunlight if you do not have an ND filter. There are a couple scenarios where you can actually expose properly without losing some shallow depth of field. But make sure regardless that you are not blowing out the highlights. Those are really hard to get back, especially in video. That's a really sloppy look, but it's also really common for beginners. Also in low light, are you getting a ton of noise during the reception? Because typically the reception's where it is darker than the rest of the film most of the time. So are you gonna bring extra lights in? Do you have a camera that can do pretty well in low light? How low does the aperture go? So just think about those things, because if you have super noisy reception footage, it's not gonna look as high quality and clean as it could. All right, number four, composition. What is the focus of your shot? What is the subject? If you're just kind of panning generally over groups of people and there's no specific focus and subject to your shot, it's not going to be a very good looking shot. People are just going to kind of be looking all over the frame like, what am I supposed to be watching right now? You want a clear focus, you want some intentionality for each shot that you're getting. And for sure there are like establishing shots where you're getting like a whole scene, like a whole group of people, but I've seen a lot of beginners just kind of shoot, here's some things happening. It's like 8 different establishing shots and you never really get into the action. So have some good composition where you are having a subject and a focus and what are we supposed to be looking at. Get into the action because we want to be able to see what's going on. Make sure you have some intentionality of what do you want the shot to look like? What do you want it to convey? If every shot in your film is like that, you're gonna have a pretty good film. All right, number 5, music. You cannot rip off songs that you do not own. You need to make sure that you have the rights and the licensing to it, because if your video gets taken down from the internet, it's not gonna be a very good look. It's not gonna look very professional, especially because you're making money off of using the song. Just not a good deal. Don't do that. Make sure you have the rights to the song that you're using. And also in regards to music and editing, make sure the song that you're using is appropriate for the couple. Make sure that it's kind of fitting what's happening. What we're seeing on screen should kind of be reflected in the music. It shouldn't be like this nice, beautiful shot and then some, you know, crazy rock music going on, unless that's something the couple recommends. I totally get there's some personality decisions that they want in the video. Totally fine, you're serving your couple. But if you're making these musical decisions, make sure that you are picking something that fits the mood of the video that you're watching. And I also suggest editing on the beat, on the music. So if you just have the music going and it's cutting at points that aren't on the beat in the music, it's gonna feel off and not as clean and sharp and high quality as it could if you're making those clean cut edits. So that leads me to number 6, clean cut editing. Make sure that you are editing in such a way that at the end of a clip, if you kind of moved your camera a little bit, that you're cutting that out, or maybe you start to lose focus at the beginning or at the end, or you should have cut the middle out because that just wasn't a good movement or whatever. Make sure that you're having those clean cut edits and not getting lazy and just being like, here's my full clip, here's the clip that I took, I'm just gonna pop it in there. Make sure you're being really specific as what you're keeping in your highlight film and not keeping in some of those movements and jerky type things or things that just don't look good when you don't need to. You could have edited that out. So number 7, intentional editing. So you have establishing shots or a sequence or a transition shot that leads from one location to the next location. Or maybe there's audio of the bride or groom speaking and you're gonna have the shot of that bride or groom on the screen so it makes sense with the story.
You know, I can't wait to spend the rest of my life with you, and I'm glad that I'm here now. And I'm glad I get to spend the rest of my life with you.
I'm not saying you have to do it like that, but just be mindful of the story that you're telling and how you can make things flow and make sense. So people are just immersed in the story rather than like, okay, where are we right now? We're bouncing back and forth, which I do chronological wedding films. You absolutely don't have to. So you can bounce from different points of the day, but make sure that you're not so all over the place. You're just throwing clips in there. Oh, this one looks good. This one looks good. This one looks good. All right, let's just throw it all in there. Make sure you're trying to make something that makes sense and it can kind of tie certain clips and certain scenes and certain emotions together. All right, number 8, audio. If you can get high quality audio during the wedding day, which right now I'm wearing a Tascam microphone on me right now. I have that linked in the description below as well. I hook this up to the groom and it gives me really high quality audio of the vows during the ceremony that I can overlay, or I can have them, you know, do personal messages beforehand if that's what they want to do and hook this up. But if you are going to do audio and overplay it over your wedding film, just make sure it's not just like your in-camera audio where it's going to sound, you're going to hear all the echoes in the room. It's just not high quality. That's going to sound kind of sloppy, might actually distract from the visuals. It's just the low quality audio. If they want it and you don't have any other options, totally cool. Like that audio could be so special and meaningful and great. But if you want to take that next step into having a really high quality wedding film, I think that great quality audio is going to be really helpful for you. I also have a Rode VideoMic Pro on top of my camera, which I don't use for any audio in the films, but I do use that for like speeches that I send to the couple, because I don't have great audio equipment to hook up to the people giving the speeches other than this, and it's just really tedious to get it on one person and the next person. I just don't want to disrupt the day like that. I probably need to get like a recorder that plugs into the DJ's board. So I want to make sure that my audio is quality before I throw it into the wedding films. All right, number 9, using correct frame rates. So if you were shooting in 24 frames per second all day long and you're planning on using slow motion, that's not gonna fly. You can maybe use optical flow. I use Final Cut Pro, that's what it's called, where you can kind of fake the slow motion and it'll add frames in there that it's guessing at. But if there's lots of movement, then it's not gonna look good. There's gonna be some artifacts and some weird stuff in the shots if you're trying to slow it down after the fact. But also, if you know that you're not going to use slow motion and you still have your camera in 120 frames per second because you were using slow motion earlier that day, that's not gonna be the best look. The most cinematic look is typically 24 frames per second. You can also make your own creative decisions on what you wanna do. Maybe you're totally cool with having 120 frames per second play out in real time, but it usually looks kind of jittery and doesn't look natural. So of course, if you have no idea what you're gonna do with your footage, shooting in a higher frame rate is a safe bet because you know that you can slow it down if you want to. But try your best to have a game plan going in at what parts of the day you want slow motion and what you have real time, so you can shoot in the right frame rate so it's going to look the best. 24 frames per second for real time, 60 frames per second or 120 frames per second for slow motion, whatever you want to do there. Just try to think ahead as to what you want to do, because it's not going to look the best if you're using the wrong frame rate and then playing it at the wrong speed. All right, last but not least, number 10, colors and white balance. So you're in a really yellow lighted room. How are you gonna make sure that your footage is not super yellow with those incandescent fluorescent bulbs that just shine a bunch of yellow light? How are you gonna make sure that you have really natural, good looking footage in those scenarios? Do you know how to set your white balance manually if your camera's not very good at getting the right white balance? Or maybe if it's really cloudy outside or something and you have really blue footage, how are you gonna be able to work with that? Or maybe you have the same lighting conditions for a period of time, but your shots all look different because your camera is getting different white balances for each of them. Cameras have gotten really good at this too, just like autofocus, but it doesn't mean they're perfect. So you wanna make sure that your shots are matching in their colors. You wanna make sure that your colors are consistent. Another thing too with colors is if you're oversaturating like crazy your footage, or you're way undersaturated, like it's really dull or really saturated, you wanna find that good middle ground. Now you can definitely lean one way or the other, you know, like the film look that isn't as saturated, or a more saturated look where the colors pop, which I like. I love when the colors pop. I like to saturate mine a little bit more than something that you would see in the movies. But there is such a thing as overdoing it and making it look kind of amateur. But I have most definitely screwed up my colors before. I've oversaturated, undersaturated, I've done it all. You just have to learn your camera, learn what picture profiles you like. I have a video about that as well for the Sony a7 III that I do typically. You can go ahead and click the link above or below to check that out. Dude, there's a turkey chasing like a squirrel or something up there. It's like flying up this hill. Dude, if a turkey comes and attacks me right now, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I don't know if I should run or like face it, just like, is it like bad to like kick a turkey? All right, well, if it's coming from behind me, you'll know before I do. But yeah, so learn those color grading techniques, learn how to color correct, make sure that your colors look natural in the way that you want them to, that isn't super distracting or so stylized that it's distracting from your film. Of course, I do not want to put your creativity in a box. I'm not telling you one way to do it. Just make sure you're not overdoing certain things, because it will look more amateur. And as you go along, you'll kind of realize what your stuff used to look like me, where I just like blew out the colors, just like, yeah, I love colors, let's make them pop. Just did not look good. They just look totally unnatural. Make sure you're practicing that and finding a good, happy medium in there somewhere. Like I said before, low to high quality is a continuum. You're going to improve as you continue to go. So don't get discouraged, like just keep learning, keep growing. Each film, you're going to learn something new, you're gonna get better, you're gonna pick up a new skill or something. So you won't be able to master everything in one shot. I haven't mastered anything. I think I've just improved over time. So it is with you. You're gonna have to be patient with the learning process, but also kind of tenacious to be able to get in there and try things. But don't be looking at other people's work and being like, I'm not like them, I'm not like them, they're way better than me, I'm never gonna get there. It's like, stop that, stop that. I played it. You've been told probably a million times here on YouTube to stop comparing to other people, but you could very well still be doing it. I still did it even though I heard it a lot. Just like, ah, man, like that's so good. How do I make it like that? So just go out there with freedom to learn and grow and be patient, but work really hard at the same time. And you're going to get better. It is going to improve. Probably not as fast as you want it to, but you will improve. So just keep getting out there, keep learning this stuff. There are tons of resources online, even just looking at your own camera, just going out and shooting anything. Doesn't have to be a wedding. That will help you learn. Block out some schedule time in your week or in your night or something to go out and shoot in low light and bright sunlight. Figure out how you can make things work and you will improve. Please let me know if you have any questions on any of these areas of focus, or if you took exception with any of them, like, Jordan, that was a stupid tip. And I'll be like, okay, thank you, but now I am sad. But thank you all so much for watching, everybody. If you like this video, please go ahead and click that subscribe button. I have a lot more videos just like this on the channel, both about wedding videography as well as video creation in general and the business of it. So if you're into that, please go ahead and consider subscribing. Again, thanks so much for watching, everybody. We'll see you on the next video.